Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 46th Annual Mill Valley Film Festival. My name is Maribel Guevara. I'm the active cinema manager for the festival. It's my pleasure to have you all here and all part of this great year of films we have for you from 141 films over the next 9 days from over 40 countries. Active Cinema is an initiative that works with a selected number of films from mostly the documentary section, where I work with the filmmakers in their film crews in selecting these action items that we know the audience are going to want to do once you finish watching this film. And we'll have a lot of that through the festival and, of course, through tonight. Now, I wanted to bring your attention to our Resiliency Fund campaign that we have started. We have sold 29% more tickets this year than last year, which is fantastic. But it's still not even 50% of what our numbers were before COVID. So we are asking for your support to donate what you can to the festival using this QR code. You'll see it everywhere if you don't want to scan it now. We have a $100,000 matching gift that we are very glad to have, and we really hope we can make it with all your help. And of course, if you are already a member, thank you so much. Your support really helps us bring these wonderful programs to the community and films like the one you are about to see tonight. I won't tell you much about it. I will let one of my idols, Rory Kennedy, director of Adrift, to present her world premiere tonight.
Thank you, Maribel. It's so great to be here for the world premiere of our documentary, Adrift. I'm going to talk very briefly because I want to get to the film as quickly as possible, but I want to thank you and the Mill Valley Film Festival for selecting this film. We're just thrilled to be here and to be sharing this story with so many of you, and thank you all for coming out on a beautiful Friday to be with us. This was a labor of love. We started this film prior to COVID, and then we had to pause it during COVID and resume. And we have many people. It was definitely a team effort to make the film. Many of the people who worked tirelessly are here today, and we're going to have an opportunity to do a Q&A, so I hope you'll stick around for that after the screening. So I'll introduce you to some of the filmmaking team at that point, but I did want to acknowledge Alexander Rodniensky and AR Content, who unfortunately can't be here today, but it was Alexander's idea to make this film, and he supported this film every step of the way. So I want to just acknowledge him and his enormous contribution to it. And excited to share the story with you and look forward to your thoughts and to continuing the conversation afterwards. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rory, for bringing such a powerful and timely film to us tonight. I know you have your special guest to join us, so why don't you call them?
Again, thank you all, and I would like to ask to join me up on stage Judy Corin, who's the producer and writer on the film, and Mustafa Alio, who we're so lucky to have, who is in the audience and was in the film and is going to join us on stage as well. So thank you, Mustafa. And I just, before we begin, if I could, would like to acknowledge a few of the folks who made this film possible and worked so hard on it, who are in the audience. So Carrie Jensen is here, who is our associate producer. Carrie, do you mind standing up and waving? There she is. Really fantastic. Alex Corba was our line producer. And Alex, please stand as well. And then Azeen Samari is here, who was our incredible editor, Azeen, if you would stand. And Mark Bailey, who is my partner, who is my husband, and who is the writer and producer on the project, and really my partner in this film and in every film, is also here. So I just want to This was a very complicated film to make in the edit room, so I really want to recognize the work of Azine and Mark and Judy and anyway, the whole team was amazing. So it was definitely a group effort, and thank you so much. So we're all here, happy to be
Great.
here, and
Yeah. So how was to watch the film in the big screen with an audience for all of you?
I thought it was really great. I thought it was, it's been a while since we've had the opportunity to see the film, and so many of the issues still are and remain ever so relevant today, and even more so. So it feels like an important film, and it covers a very large topic and over the course of history, and tries to really, and all of these very powerful individual stories from around the world, and tries to bring that together to help us recognize kind of our larger responsibility that we all have here. So it's kind of, I think our intention was to do kind of a 10,000-foot view of this issue, and to then dip in and tell individual stories, but to really help us understand what was happening globally. Because I, personally had the experience of, under the Trump administration particularly, and what was happening on our border, and being, just apoplectic about how we were treating refugees, and then to sort of understand how it was happening in Europe and other places in the world. And it's much more of a kind of global issue that we have to get our head around, as well as, local. Anyway, so I think that was the intention. I think it delivered.
Yeah, in 2019, when we started making the film, the refugee numbers were, the number of people displaced in the world was at approximately 80 million. Now it's at 108 million. So just, 4 short years later. So sadly, it becomes more and more relevant. So to see it now and know that things haven't gotten better, they have in some ways, but Mustafa, how was it for you?
It was emotional at one point. Sometimes I feel I try my best not to watch or get into so much of our own stories. But at the same time, I was grateful today because it's a bit of feeling that we have some people try to help, try to do something. We're not alone in this. Doing a lot of travel, working with a lot of refugees. I'm a refugee myself. Living those memories sometimes is not easy. But when we see a little bit of support, and a movie like this today, to me, even though it was emotional, but at the same time, it felt that we have a bit of support. I'm grateful that, so many of you came today and know about this, and hopefully you do something about it in a way or another. But it was just great to feel that we're not alone for a bit.
Thank you, Mustafa.
And Rory, you wanted to tell how the whole story of how this film became about in the beginning, but I think it will be great to know where does this idea and at the end this film origin for you.
Yeah, well, it's actually interesting because I mentioned Alexander Radyansky at the beginning to acknowledge his contribution, and this film was really his brainchild. So he approached Mark and myself with the idea of looking back at the story of the MS St. Louis and connecting it and kind of the aftermath of World War II and connecting it to the refugee crisis today. And we were immediately intrigued by the idea and felt that it was both timely and relevant and important. So we jumped on board. Alexander has an interesting background because he has lived in Russia for the last 25 years in Moscow, and he's a very successful businessman, media. He's focused on media, and he's also made a number of films like Beanpole and a few others that have been very successful and have been nominated for Academy Awards here in the United States. But he's, as I said, lived in Russia, but he's Ukrainian. And so during the course of making this film, of course, the war broke out in the Ukraine, and he came out very much in support of the Ukrainian people, and ultimately and pretty quickly had to flee Russia as a result. So he, had a lot of resources, but was for a period of time, a refugee himself, and so it was, this film, I think, for him, took on a very intense and very personal stakes.
And Mustafa, what do you think it's gonna take to change the broken system that I'm not sure even when it even break to start, right? So if you will be in a place that you could give advice to policymakers, what would be your maybe one or two things that you think that should be fixed and can be fixed?
It's a big question. So many things. But really, I think one of the gaps today we see globally is there is a huge disconnect between always the world trying to create a humanitarian solution for political problems. And I feel that political will today is not there. And as long as we have that separation between politician, political will, practical solutions for refugees, and working with refugees to listening and then have an engagement with refugees, allow for influence of refugees toward the thinking, the thought process of those policymakers. Unless we make that bridge between that, yes, we need the humanitarian responses, but at the same time, in addition to that, we need to think politically about it, and we need to bridge those gaps between both of them. Maybe that's one of the main things.
Well, no, I just didn't know if you wanted to share a little bit about your own personal journey, and then also your role as a leader now in the refugee movement and policy.
Yes. So I'm originally from Syria. I arrived in Canada as one of the aliens. Applied for asylum in Canada. Got my citizenship recently, but then been working so much on, coming as a refugee myself, I started kind of volunteering, but then start working a little bit more on economic inclusion. And then I wanted to have a conversation globally or even nationally in Canada and other places that let's just basically talk about refugees from economical perspective. Let's just put emotions on the side and then have a practical conversation. And that's what I started kind of the movement, engaging with policy, as successfully was able to work on creation of different programs. I mean, one of the programs that I'm the most proud of and started in Canada and now UK and other countries doing is opening economic pathways for refugees, which basically, how can the world think of refugees as a skills and as people with education, with backgrounds, and there was something called the Economic Mobility Pathway started in Canada. But now over 1,000 refugees with their families have been resettled to different countries under that kind of skill tree, and then their families. But then after that, it was the idea of how can we engage today with policymakers, with government? How can we build institutionalized process where a government can interact with refugees, can have a conversation with them, and basically start implementing their priorities in a way they want, but then again, in partnership with refugees, and that's today what we're doing. So as a refugee seat, I'm one of the co-managing director of an international team that worked with about 20 governments on convincing them that we can do what it's intended, we can provide protection for many refugees if we build that kind of a partnership with refugees along the way. And that's what we've been doing.
Thank you for your amazing work. And that reminds me of kind of a moment in our own history where I think we were kind of did the best we've done in terms of refugee policy, which was in how we treated the Vietnamese in this country. And after the Vietnam War, when there were so many Vietnamese fleeing, there was very much an open door policy in the United States. But besides having an open door policy, there was also a program to really integrate the Vietnamese into our society, and there was an effort, and actually our family and my uncle Teddy was a big part of helping to create this policy, but our family would also adopt Vietnamese, and you had opportunities to adopt Vietnamese families and help them integrate and help the kids get into schools and help the parents learn the language. And the Vietnamese, I think, in part, as a result of those policies, have been one of the most successful, on economic terms, one of the most successful refugee populations in the history of the United States. Did you want to add to that?
Just that, we have the slide up there, but Yamali Flores and her family, the Honduran asylum seeker that you saw in the film, now lives not far from here in the Bay Area. And it was ordinary citizens who have a nonprofit called Bay Area Border Relief and another organization called ALAS that helped Yami, once they were able to legally cross into the United States, help them get housing. Someone donated a condo for them that they lived in for a year before they could get out on their own, help them get into school and just get settled. And this is, in Canada, they have a very strong movement of ordinary citizens helping refugees. So it's, it's not something that's distant from us. It's really something that we can and should do as ordinary citizens to help welcome the stranger.
Yeah. So please, if you can, take a picture of this slide, and whenever you have a time, explore the opportunities that Judy helped me put together here. As I see it, it's a broken system, and we citizens don't have much power over those decisions, but we can open the door to our house and to our neighborhood. And I hope everybody walks out with that message tonight. I just wanted to comment on the animation of the film, because seeing it on the big screen, it was so beautifully done. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about it, because it really took me inside the lives of those people described in the animation.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, the animation, thank you for commenting on it. It was nice to see it up on the big screen for myself as well. That was Una was our animator. She's from Sweden, and Iceland. Sorry. And she was just fantastic to work with, and I think had a beautiful eye and brought so much heart to the story. And I think she was, able to help us in these very, compelling stories that we didn't have footage for, to help the audience really understand what it's like to be a refugee and what they went through to get to the point where they're at another country's door. And so it's a really important element in the storytelling, and we're enormously grateful to her.
Yeah, great job on that. Maybe to kind of end the conversation, what are the plans to take the film? How do you want to release it? How can we help you show it to as many people as possible, especially in this country, but everywhere else?
Thank you. Well, we're working on that now. We have not presented the film yet to distributors. So we're excited to have finished the film and be able to premiere it here at Mill Valley. And the next step is to try to get it onto the global stage. And our hope is to work on kind of different tiers. So our hope is that we will have a home for the film with a major distributor or streamer. And then we'll also work on kind of the ground level and do a ground campaign and effort to get the film in front of strategic audiences, do community screenings, and make it available. And really, our hope is to get it as widely distributed in front of as many eyes as possible.
Mustafa, where would you like to see the film being shown?
I don't know. I hope to grow as global as possible, and just kind of to bring that awareness. I think we were talking a little bit before is what unique about this film and what I like about it. It was the idea that it's not completely focused on the emotional stories. It brings that kind of a policy, history, and a combination of also kind of the story being informed by this. And personally, I haven't seen a lot of movie like this, so I'm really grateful for such a movie because it has that kind of combination that really needed. It brings a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more understanding, but at the same time, hopefully, it engaged with people's emotions and mind at the same time.
Great. Maybe can we take one or two questions from the
Yeah, of
audience? And if
course.
anybody's will have to speak up. Yes, over there.
I was just totally blown away by the size of refugee camps around the world. I had no idea that they were as big as Congo.
I'll repeat. I guess the question comment is around the size of the camps and who is doing something about it, or how does that work?
Well, Mustafa is heading on an airplane tomorrow to continue this discussion with policymakers. So do you want to take a crack at that one?
Who's working on this? Really not many people. I think most of the things right now with the camps, and it's very unfortunate, it's always about that donor countries don't want to resettle as many people. I mean, also one of the staggering number in a way, or even kind of very, in a negative way, shocking number. Every year, the global community resettle only less than, I mean, a few years ago it was less than 1%. And a lot of people continue to say that less than 1%. Actually, as of last year, it was less than 0.1%. So we're not even getting to this. And today that people are staying in a camp, and sometimes in a way is, if we're in a camp, that's it. It's just kind of alive for 20 years, and now it's going to grow more. And I think one of the other issue in there that a lot of people, and Leah was talking about this a bit in the movie, where everyone think of camps as a temporary thing. But then it goes beyond that kind of 20 and 30 years, and maybe now kind of for 40 years. But even that shift in minds and how can we actually do it a little bit differently, this is kind of a recently start happening. The only good examples or that are start happening are coming from refugee-led organizations themselves. Not the big NGOs, not the big INGOs and all of that. Like one of the examples on the border of Syria, there is an organization called Mulham Team that they start actually building villages in different areas and then start basically getting houses for people, because getting a tent and then expect people to live as a temporary thing for 20 years in a tent, and there are like different weathers when there are floods and all of that. So at least in a way is that, okay, we can build infrastructure in there, and then we don't give the people the ownership of this, then it's owned by the organizations. And those kind of innovative solutions, kind of different ways, are coming from refugee-led organization and refugees themselves, but unfortunately not much coming from the international community so far.
And just to put a figure on that, for example, in the United States, we've only committed to resettle 125,000 refugees per year. Okay, out of those, out of the 108 million, there are, what, about 40 million are considered refugees, right? And then there are about a number 35
yeah.
to 40, and 5 million asylum seekers, and we've only committed to resettling 125,000 people. So, and this year, I think we're only at like 14,
60. I mean, 60 max is not going to reach 100.
And under the
Yeah.
Trump administration, it was
cut down.
15.
Yeah, it was 15,000, and they barely hit that. So we, that's writing to your lawmakers and saying this is untenable, unconscionable.
And it's also supporting, really understanding what your elected officials' position is on this, and making sure there are people who are representing us in Washington, not just the president, but Congress, who are being a little bit more forward-thinking and thoughtful about some of these issues.
Maybe one last question. Sorry, over there it was first. Yes, you lady. Yep. Mhm. Can you repeat a little?
I was asking if you know who the lawmakers are that are showing some kind of passion and commitment to this. I mean, are there any?
It's a pretty challenging subject. I mean, I would like to say Democrats, but it's complicated, I think, and there is, unfortunately, and I think Trump, I know Steve Bannon said to Trump, the only way you can get elected is if you go hard on refugees. That's going to be the most strategic, that's your only path to victory. So, it's unfortunately an issue that is, I think, triggering for much of the electorate. They want the walls to go up, and they want the militarization, and it plays on these fears, as the film suggests. And I think Democrats are, not necessarily wanting to be on the lead in a kind of forward-thinking way on this. My Uncle Teddy was fantastic, so I would like to acknowledge his contribution for many decades on this issue, but I don't know who is standing out at this point.
Maybe I can add one thing. Today, really, there are lawmakers that are champion, and even there are that I got a chance to have a chat with them, behind closed doors, and where they're completely on board in supporting refugees and understanding this. But then it's always about the voter too. I think one of the unfortunate things today is that we're getting into that kind of a short-term investment, short-term election, short-term things in every way. And then a lot of people, it's just that they care so much about their term to the point that they're being actually influenced by people. And maybe one of the beacon of hope that potentially could happen in the next 10, 20 years, because obviously no one in their right mind thinks that there will be a quick solution. But in Canada, one of the unique things that both the right wing and left wing governments are in support of refugees and welcoming. Some of them, the right wing will basically say that we need less numbers, and then the other is kind of a little bit more number, but in generally they are supportive. One of the interesting things in Canada, and now is coming to the US, is around the community sponsorship for refugees. So that today, like now in the US, and I hope as many of you start getting involved in actually sponsoring refugees coming to the US. One of the cool figure in Canada that 1 out of every 8 Canadian was either involved directly or know someone who involved in sponsoring refugee. And that resonate with policy and lawmakers in there. That basically, this kind of interactions that happen. So maybe this is a plan for 10, 20 years, that the more American can get sponsored and engage with refugees, then that hopefully will send a message to lawmakers in the future.
I think it should start in Mill Valley.
I love that idea. Maybe, Mustafa, you'll hear that next year this amazing community in Marin County started opening doors to all refugees in the area. And with that, I think we have to thank you all and wish you the best of luck with your work and your film.
Thank
Let's show it
you.
everywhere.
Thank you for showcasing it. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.